Okay, this is a whistle-stop tour through language change and hopefully answering whether it can be controlled. So first big question is, what is language change? What is it that changes? Okay, remember it's four things: phonology, lexicon, syntax, and standardization. What's okay and what's not. There's a lot of information on these slides, so pause it if you need to. So, models of language change. How do people think that it happens? First theory is analogy. It's basically the applying of existing rules to simplify or create new words. Second one is economy. It's basically making the language a bit easier to use. Examples of this are text-to-speak and assimilations such as handbag being contracted to handbag. All of these theories of language change are actually descriptivist, but this evolutionary theory seems to be the most popular descriptivist theory. This is very much like Darwin's theory of evolution. It's just whatever bit of language is best suited survives. Now, as this is a very popular descriptive theory, there are a number of theorists who've actually added to this. So we've got Hockett with his random fluctuation. He basically just says random mistakes or errors within the language contribute to the creation of new words. Another theory is substratum theory, which basically said it's external influences. A good example of this is multicultural London English. Then we have the very rational functional theory by Halliday, which says that language changes basically because there is a need. For example, Britain went through its industrial revolution a little bit earlier than everybody else. We invented new things and there was a need to name them. Equally, having more money led to advances in science. We had to name those things. And then finally, most recently, as it were, the internet, invented by an English guy. And even today, English is the most popular language on the internet, therefore has a lot more influence, a lot more innovation going on. And neologisms are occurring all the time. But change isn't enough. Once you've made a change, how is that then standardized? Well, you've got two theories on how this works. You've got Haugen stages, which are elaborated here, or you've got Aitchison stages, which is very similar, except codification comes at the end. Then you might want to worry about how language change spreads through society. Now, a very ancient way of looking at it is it's like a tree. It starts off from one root and then sort of spreads out. For example, like the Latin base of some words. However, this doesn't really explain any external influence. Another one is Chen's S-curve. Now, it's called S-curve to describe sort of how change spreads through society, but actually it's sort of quite cyclical because at the end of the process, you find that words fall out of favour and then just disappear. There's another chap called Bailey who said it's more like a wave, although I think I'm going to rename it as Bailey's ripple because that's really what he means, is when you flip a stone into water, you get ripples that emanate outwards, and that's what he says language does. However, Churchill said that's a load of rubbish because he believed that villages and smaller towns got missed out because really it was just spreading from city to city. Now, obviously, descriptivists believe that language change really is just a natural process and it's not something that you control. However, prescriptivists have attempted it. So we've heard of the Inkhorn controversy and Jonathan Swift, who felt that we should be copying the Académie Française. However, actually there are a lot more up-to-date versions as well, such as the national curriculum in schools in England, And also, English as a second language is always taught with British Standard English. Might be useful to remember that that was criticised by Jennifer Jenkins, who said it was basically all done by the examination boards to make money, because although 400 million people have it as their first language, over 1 billion people speak English as a second language and therefore probably don't speak British Standard English. Language change. Obviously, we've got the now remember that Aitchison isn't actually a prescriptivist. She just created these metaphors of decay to mock prescriptivist thinking. Then we've got some specific attitudes to Pidgeon and Crail, specifically colonial legacy. John Mugabe was particularly vocal about this and felt that it was sort of reinforcing almost like a cultural elitism. Down with this concept of English as a lingua franca, with 1 billion people speaking English as another language. What legitimacy does British Standard English have to claim to be the best version, the most authoritative? Then we've got a bit of benign prescriptivism. This basically is they accept language change as fairly natural. However, they do try to guide it a bit just to keep people saying nice things to each other. For example, Steven Pinker in his example of retard also got this whole idea of gatekeeping. For example, criticising accents. You might want to refer to Howard Giles and Match Guys with the Birmingham accent. Got this whole thing of judging dialects as substandard. Remember that Caxton specifically chose the dialect. And then we're back to those who enforce rigid grammatical rules, such as teachers. Then on the other side, you've got those descriptivists. Although this isn't exactly attitudes, it does sort of explain as to why people might change their language, because it links to Lyubov and overt and covert prestige. Social and cultural borrowing, which once again sort of suggests why people might use loan words or borrowed words, because once again it gives them this covert prestige, possibly overt if you're speaking French. Anyway, hope all that gives you some